We're in section 2.7. We're speaking of inequalities. Inequalities are less than or greater than, less than equal to or greater than equal to. We're going to start out this section by I will start out this section by showing you how to write your answer in the proper form, and the proper form is called interval notation. The first problem you see is x is less than 5, and that symbol where it's pointing towards the left, that is your less than symbol. On a number line starts at one arrow, which represents negative infinity, and it goes to the other arrow, which represents infinity. The symbol that looks like an 8 that fell over is called your infinity symbol. The arrows mean that they go out forever and ever and ever, and in math, the symbol we use for forever and ever and ever, that symbol is the infinity symbol. In this problem, I say x is less than 5. So I'm going to find 5 on the number line, and I've located it, and I have to decide which way to shade. I'm looking for the numbers less than 5. So the numbers less than 5 would be 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 and so forth. So that's the way that I would shade. Another hint that I give you is I always want you to get x on the left-hand side. If you follow that rule, interval notation will be much easier. So always try to get your x on the left-hand side. In this particular problem, it is on the left. When x is on the left, the arrow, the way the inequality is pointing, tells you where to shade. You'll see in this problem you had this symbol, which was our less than symbol. It's pointing in this direction. That means we're going to shade in this direction, which of course is our left direction. The next problem that you see is x is less than or equal to. If an inequality has a little bar underneath the inequality sign, that means it's equal to, less than or equal to. So again, this one we would start at 5, and we would shade all of the numbers less than 5. Coming to our bottom row, we have x is greater than 5. So again, I'm going to locate 5. In this particular problem, I see it's pointing in this direction, which is the right direction. So greater than is pointing right. That means I'm going to shade it towards the right. Greater than 5 would be 6 and 7 and 8, and so we would shade in that direction. Greater than or equal to 5 would again start at 5 and go to the right, greater than or equal to 5. Now in each of these problems, I have a green region shaded. Below your inequalities and your number lines, it gives you some rules. It says the symbols less than or greater than require a parenthesis on the number. The symbols less than equal to or greater than equal to require a bracket on the number. So let's go back to the number lines that we have and we've shaded in green, and let's use those rules to put parentheses and brackets on our number line. You'll notice my first problem on the top left says x is less than 5. In this problem, since we have the less than without the bar under it, that tells us that we're going to use a parenthesis. So I'm going to use a parenthesis on that 5. Going across to our next one, you see less than or equal to. If you have equal to with a little line under it, that tells you to use a bracket on that 5. Going down to our bottom row, x is greater than 5. There's no line, so that means it's going to use parentheses. X is greater than or equal to 5. That has a line, so we're going to use a bracket. Now, one of the things that's not mentioned here is what do we do on the infinity? So here's your rule for that. Infinity or negative infinity, you will always use parentheses. So going back up to our number line, where we are stuck on an arrow, we will put a parenthesis because negative and positive infinity always use parentheses. So we would have a parenthesis here, a parentheses here. Of course, that would be at the end, negative infinity to 5 there, we'd have a parenthesis on the left side. 5 to infinity, we would have a parenthesis on the right. And 5 to infinity here, we would have a parenthesis on the right. And that's what your picture would look like. Let's try some more of these. So I ask you to graph these inequalities on the number lines provided. My first problem says x is greater than or equal to 2. So what I'm going to do first is go to my number line and find the number 2. And I'm going to shade in the direction that the arrow points. So that would be shading towards the right. The rules for interval notation are written at the bottom of your page. Going back to x is greater than or equal to 2, since it has that equal to on it, since it has that equal to on the page, that means you're going to put a bracket there. It goes to the arrow uses parentheses. Looking at our second one, it's a special case. I told you if x is on the left, you always shade the way the arrow points. But this one, the x is not on the left, the x is in the middle. I call this one a sandwich. What I notice about this problem is I see a -1, so I'm going to put a mark there. And I see a 4, I'm going to put a mark there. And the problem actually reads -1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 4. My rule about which way to shade and my rule about which way to shade and it's shading in the air sorry, I got tongue-tied. My rule about which way to shade doesn't hold here because it is a um, sandwich case or double inequality. What you can notice though is the x lies in between -1 and 4, and so that's where you would shade. Since x is in between -1 and 4, that means you're going to shade between -1 and 4. Looking at the problem, you have a less than, that takes parentheses, and then you have a less than equal to, and that takes a bracket. So that's what the picture would look like. For the last one on the page, you have x is less than -3. So I'm going to locate -3. This one is our regular type. Since there's only one x and it's on the left, it tells us which way to shade. We will shade the way it points. It is pointing towards the left. When we get ready for brackets and parentheses, the arrow uses parentheses. The -3 uses parentheses because it's strictly less than. Now I've shown you the pictures and how they look graphically. Now I want you to write your answers in the interval notation form. To write your answer in interval notation, you'll always write from left to right. Going back to problem A at the top of the page, x is greater than or equal to 2. I'm going to write it from right, sorry, let me say that one more time. I'm going to write it from left to right. Always write from left to right. This left line is at 2, and the arrow is on the right side, so that would go from 2 to infinity. That is a comma in the middle. 2 uses a bracket, and infinity uses parentheses. Looking at our special case B, -1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 4. It would go from -1, that's on the left, to 4 is on the right. -1 uses parentheses, and 4 uses a bracket. Looking at the last one, we're going to go from -infinity to -3, and that's what it would look like. The blue answers that you see here, those are called interval notation, and that's how you will write all of your answers in section 2.7.